In this video, we'll watch an American suspense film, The Game. Nick was a billionaire, but his life was monotonous and boring. After his divorce from his wife, he lived alone in a mansion. There was only an old housekeeper taking care of his daily life. When he was young, Nick had a trauma when he witnessed his father commit suicide by jumping from a building. Affected by this, his character was cold and withdrawn. There was nothing worthy of his concern except for business and money. On Nick's birthday, the younger brother, who hadn't met for a long time, gave him a membership card of CRS Corporation. The younger brother asked Nick to see if it would make his life fun. Nick refused, but his brother insisted repeatedly that he had to accept the birthday gift. In the evening, Nick came home and his ex-wife called to wish him a happy birthday. The ex-wife had remarried and now lived happily. Nick sat alone in the empty room. Feeling lonely, he thought of the membership card of CRS. The next day, Nick finished negotiating in a building and found that CRS was also in this building. So he decided to stop by. The company was still under renovation. A staff member named Jim greeted him. Jim introduced their company tailored games for each member. Nick filled out the membership form with curiosity and did a psychological test. A series of checks such as a physical fitness test took him a whole day. Nick signed the agreement to join the game. Jim asked him to wait for the notification. Then Nick accidentally met two old CRS members at the tennis club. Nick wanted to find out what game CRS provided. Their answer was confusing. One of them mentioned a saying in the Bible, "Whereas once I was blind, now I can see." Although Nick's face was compelling, it aroused his interest. Nick received a notice from CRS. His application was not approved. Nick couldn't believe his ears, but they did not wait for him to ask more and hung up the phone. In the evening, Nick came home and saw a person lying in front of his house. This reminded him of the scene when his father's suicide. Nick approached to check the situation but found that it was a clown doll. He carried the doll to the house and took out a key with the CRS logo from its mouth. Then he took out the tools and wanted to open the doll's mouth to see what was inside. Unexpectedly, the host on TV started a conversation with him. The host was there to tell Nick the rules of the game. Nick felt that this was coincident, so he wanted to switch off the TV. The butler came over to stop his dangerous behavior. The host left Nick an emergency call for CRS and then returned to normal. Nick followed the prompt and found the camera installed in the doll's eye. From then on, Nick became suspicious. He felt that everyone around him might be arranged by the game. But he was confident that everything was under his control. As the partner of the branch office, Anson failed to achieve the goal and lost some money. Nick brought a termination contract to fire Anson. Although Anson and Nick's father are old friends for many years, Nick was still merciless. Because for him, money was the most important. But at the critical moment, Nick can't open the briefcase and can't get the prepared contract. He had to put the matter off for a while. Nick smashed the box in desperation to vent his emotions. But the unfortunate thing just began to happen. In the evening, Nick was accidentally spilled a drink by a waitress, Chris, at the restaurant. Chris was fired after she made an apology for a mistake. At this time, someone gave Nick a piece of paper. Nick immediately went after Chris, who had walked out after reading it. Suddenly, a person passed out at the intersection and Chris quickly stepped out to help. Nick thought this was arranged. The person must have pretended. But Chris said, "He's pissing his pants, mister. Is that real enough for you?" When Nick was about to call for an ambulance, he happened to see a police car. They called the ambulance to carry away the passed out person, but the police asked Nick and Chris to make a transcript. In the ambulance, Nick showed the note to Chris. It said, "Don't let her get away." Chris felt Nick was inexplicable. When they came to the underground parking lot of the hospital, suddenly the lights went off. Hundreds of people in front of him disappeared. Nick could be sure this was a prank by CRS at this time, but he didn't understand why Chris was involved. They wanted to take the elevator to the lobby, but the elevator was broken. Nick took out the CRS key and actually started the elevator. However, the elevator malfunctioned during the ascent. Nick and Chris went to CRS after climbing up the elevator. The two walked into the hall and triggered the anti-theft system. Nick suggested staying in place and waiting for the security to come over to explain. Chris walked away on her own. Nick had to follow her. On the way, the police released police dogs to chase after them. The two climbed into an abandoned building and jumped into the trash can to get away. Nick has never been so embarrassed, but he was no longer so indifferent after these things. He took Chris to his office to get changed and called Chris a taxi. Before leaving, Chris admitted that someone paid for her to spill drinks on Nick. The next day, Nick received a call from the secretary at home, saying that his credit card was left at the hotel. Nick opened the wallet and the credit card was not there. He called the hotel and asked. They said that the wine and flowers in the room were ready. A woman called and said she would be there a little later. Nick felt inexplicably running to the hotel to find out. What he saw when he came to the room was a scene after an indulgence. There were also many explicit photos on the table. Nick thought it was Anson, so he found someone like him to take a photo to prank him. Nick took the lawyer to find Anson and scolded him as soon as he entered the door. But Anson had already accepted Nick's terms and signed the agreement with the lawyer. Nick knew that Anson had misunderstood, so he paid for his reckless behavior. Then Nick asked the lawyer to investigate what the CRS company was doing. At the same time, he received a bent handle wrench from CRS. When Nick returned home in the evening, the electricity went off again. The wall of the room was painted with graffiti. A piece of paper in the doll's mouth said, "Like my father before, I choose eternal sleep." The other side of the paper was a photo of Nick's father when he committed suicide. When Nick called the police, his brother's sudden appearance scared him. His brother mysteriously asked Nick to come out to the car to discuss. He said that he was going to be miserable by CRS. He had already paid the money, but they continued to punish him. Now he needed to pay more to ask CRS to terminate the game. As he said, the tire suddenly burst. Nick got out to change the tire. The brother opened the glove box and many CRS keys fell all over the place. He thought that Nick and CRS were on the same side, so he ran away. Nick caught up and heard his brother's accusations against him. The younger brother hated Nick playing the role of a father to control his life. After the younger brother ran away, Nick decided to call a taxi. Unexpectedly, the driver suddenly jumped out of the car, making Nick heading straight to the river. At this moment, Nick used his crooked wrench to open the door and saved his life. After escaping, Nick couldn't bear CRS's deadly game and called the police. He brought the police to the CRS company, but it was already empty. After investigation, CRS did not do any registration with the government, and the police could not find out. Therefore, Nick hired these people. If it was said that the CRS company's deliberate murder, the motive was not clear. In the end, the police only filed the case and did not file an investigation. Then Nick found Chris's residence through the taxi company. When he tried to trust Chris, he found that Chris' identity was fake. Because Chris's home had no water, the refrigerator was empty and so was the bookshelf. Even the picture of Chris in the frame was cut from a magazine. Nick asked her what was going on. Chris softly indicated that there was a camera on the smoke detector. Nick was so angry that he smashed the monitor. Then the people from CRS arrived in full gear. Apart from anything else, they shot at the room. Nick followed Chris out of the house and drove away. In the car, Chris admitted that she was just a small employee of CRS. Nick's brother had colluded with the company from the beginning. The purpose was to defraud billions of assets in Nick's property. They calculated Nick's account password based on the psychological test done when Nick joined the club. Now the company had got the money, so they wanted to kill him. Nick immediately called Swiss Bank to check and the account was really empty. The sudden event did not make Nick lose his mind. He left a message to the lawyer to explain the situation and took Chris to a house in the forest. Chris comforted Nick and said, "It's just money. You should be glad you're alive." At this time, the lawyer who heard the message called Nick. The lawyer said that Nick still had the money. After hearing it, Chris directly said the lawyer's name, and said that the lawyer and CRS were also on the same side. Nick hung up hurriedly, his heart began throbbing, and he felt dizzy. It turned out that Chrissy drugged his coffee. The access code and password of Nick's account was exposed when he called the bank and answered the phone. The customer service was also from CRS. Nick knew the truth, but it was too late. He could only softly fall on the ground and gradually lose consciousness. When Nick woke up again and found himself lying in a cemetery, he was left in Mexico. Nick's loneliness and arrogance have disappeared. Since he was small, he had never lived so miserably. But Nick had not lost his belief. He went to the US Embassy for help, but he didn't have any documents and couldn't tell why he was in Mexico. The ambassador refused to help him return to San Francisco. In desperation, Nick sold the only watch left on his body to solve the food and clothing problem. This watch was a relic of his father. Nick had been wearing it since he was 18. This was the first time he ate roadside snacks and took the bus with the civilians. Nick came to a car service station on the US-Mexico border. He took out all his money and took a shuttle truck back to San Francisco. Nick returned to the mansion with a public auction notice hanging on the door. He turned over and entered the looted house. Nick came to the hotel to find his brother, but the hotel manager said his brother was crazy and was taken to the hospital. The desperate Nick found his ex-wife to borrow a car. At this time, the ex-wife was the only person he could trust. The ex-wife was surprised by the present Nick. Nick finally realized his outlook on life. He apologized to his ex-wife. It turned out that he shouldn't be so indifferent and inhuman to those around him. At this time, the restaurant's TV was playing Jim's ad. Nick realized that Jim, who was greeting him at CRS, was an actor. He remembered that Jim had said the name of a restaurant, so he found the restaurant, followed the clues, and quickly found Jim. Jim was very nervous when he saw Nick. He explained that he was just taking a job. Nick held Jim with a gun and took him to find the person behind. They came to the restaurant floor of the building and everyone was there. Both the so-called old members, the taxi driver, and Chrissy. Nick held Chrissy with a gun, and the security guard came after hearing gun sounds. The scene was suddenly chaotic, and Jim was shot and fell to the ground. Nick followed Chris to the top and forced her to tell her the person behind. Seeing that Nick was crazy, she anxiously explained that all of this was a game. The security guards used no real bullets. A birthday party had been prepared for him downstairs by his brother. Nick, who was deceived one after another, no longer believed Chris's words. He thought it was just her way to escape. At this time, the door was forcibly sawn open. The panicking Nick shot at the door. Unexpectedly, he hit the younger brother's champagne. It turned out that everything was really just a game, as Chris said, but Nick made a big mistake. Nick won this game. His concept of money and affection had changed significantly. The truth was clear. Although Nick knew that he had a lot of fortune, he lost his only family. Without brother, he didn't bother to live anymore. The distraught Nick jumped directly from the top of the building. At this time, his father jumping off the building kept flashing in his mind. Nick thought he was dead. Unexpectedly, he fell on the air cushion that was already prepared. The hall was a birthday party for him, and at this time his brother came to him alive. Nick hugged his brother, weeping with joy. One may only know what is most important after losing. This game really ended. It turned out to be a psychotherapy game arranged by his brother for Nick. When he jumped off the building, Nick completed self-salvation with his life and gained rebirth. Finally, he caught up with Chris, who was about to leave, and decided to follow his heart. After a long time, it was just a boring game. Alright, this movie ends here. Thank you for watching. See you next time.